spent a lot of time over the last few months wrestling with one big question. Are we changeable? And maybe you've got some leftover thoughts on that, or maybe you missed some of those lessons. If you would like to go back, we post all of those videos on our Facebook page. You'll have to search for it. It's FBC Big Lake Youth. I don't know. You know how to find stuff on Facebook. Just go search it. You'll be able to find it. Also on our YouTube channel, which is FBC Big Lake YouTube something. Anyhow, you'll be able to find those because you know what you're doing a lot better than I do. So it's time for us to move on from the question, are we changeable, and ask the next big question, which is the world changeable? Now, this is a big question, and we need to define our terms here. We need to know what we're talking about. So we're going to need to be able to ask some preliminary questions. What do we mean by the world? In what ways might the world be changeable? Do we have any say in changing the world? Can one person change the world? Well, some of those things I would like for us to talk about here in our groups. And that's the first discussion that I'd like you to have, because I think we can all think back and think of some people in history who have changed the world. So I want you to have a conversation about who those people are. So here's your question. Name some examples of people who have changed the world. And then with that discussion, also ask this: did they change the world for better or for worse? I want to remind you that we tend toward myopia, toward nearsightedness. We tend to look at things that are in front of us and not be able to see things that are far away from us. So we need a little bit of perspective when we're talking about something as big as the world. So I got really nerdy, and I just want you to follow me on this here for a minute. So here we are. This is us. This is our little youth group. And your smiling faces over here. Can you see your smiling faces? There you are. And there may be 50 of us if we were all together. We meet here, of course, at this church once or twice a week. And right now, this is the part of the world we understand. But of course, we're part of the whole church, First Baptist Church of Big Lake. Your younger brothers and sisters, maybe lots of older people, maybe 200 or 300 people, if we were all able to be here together at the same time. Now, of course, First Baptist Church is part of our town. Here comes the town of Big Lake. Big Lake, Texas, according to the census 10 years ago, has a population of about 3,000 people, but of course that changes with fluctuation in the oil field, and usually Big Lake's population is more like 4,000 or 5,000 people. And Big Lake, you can see it's about a square mile, a little bit more than a square mile in area. Now, Big Lake, part of Reagan County, as you know, the county seat. And Reagan County looks like this. Now, most of the people in Reagan County do live in Big Lake, so the population numbers aren't going to change all that much here. But in terms of area, Reagan County is roughly 1,200 square miles. So let's back out here a little bit more until you can kind of see the outline a little bit for the great state of Texas. About 29 million people live in the state of Texas. Texas is also the largest state in terms of area, except for Alaska. Texas covers about 270,000 square miles, and that's pretty big, right? Nearly 900 miles across. And of course, Texas obviously is part of the United States, which now has about 330 million people living in it. If you drive to west coast to east coast here, you'd have to drive about 3,000 miles. If you want to know how big the United States is, well, the part you see here is about 3 million square miles. If you put in Alaska and Hawaii, then the U.S. covers about 3.8 million square miles. Big Lake is starting to look pretty small over here, isn't it? So, of course, the U.S. plus Canada plus Mexico, that all makes up what we would refer to as North America, which currently contains 580 million people and covers about 9.5 million square miles, which seems gigantic until you consider this. Even all of North America still only has less than 10% of the world's population. 7.8 billion people live on this planet. And that number, in case you're wondering, continues to go up at about this rate that you're seeing here. And the entire land area of the whole planet is about 57 million square miles. So, for perspective, the world that you're usually paying attention to starts to get smaller and smaller. In fact, let's go back here. Let's find us again. Where are we? Oh, here we are. There's Big Lake. Here comes... Oh, look at that. Here we are. This is us. One more time. I tried to tell you that I got really nerdy. I spent way too much time on Google Earth learning how to do all that stuff, which, by the way, you can do on your own computer. It probably wouldn't take you nearly as long to figure it out as it did me. But why would I do all of that? Well, I wanted us to gain some perspective. We look at the world that's right in front of us and that's right around us, but when we're going to ask the question, is the world changeable, we need to talk about the world in a broader sense. So what do we even mean when we say the world? We're going to use this definition of the world to get us started. The world is the planet plus the people. The planet plus the people. Now that makes sense, right? The world is planet Earth and all the people who live in it. Planet Earth and everything that goes with it, what we would call nature, the earth, the land, the sea, all the creatures that live on the land and in the sea. Planet Earth is the world, but the world is also the people who live in the world. But the next question we need to ask is, whose world is it? Who does the world belong to? And for this, we are going to our Bible verse for today. This is in Psalm 24. David says this: "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." By the way, this is also where our definition of the world comes from. Can you see it? The planet, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world, the people, the world and all who live in it. That's where our definition of world comes from. Planet plus people. But it's not really our world, is it? In fact, this verse is pretty clear about whose world it is. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Well, what gives God the right to say that all of this belongs to him? Well, David's going to go on in this poem and give us the next piece, which is this: "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. For he founded it on the seas and established it on the waters." Oh yeah, the earth is the Lord's because he created it. He founded it, it says, that he established it. This is why the entire Bible begins with the declaration, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Now, we can have a scientific argument here if you want to, and frankly, I kind of enjoy having that argument. But we don't want to miss the main point of what we're saying here. According to what the Bible teaches, the story in Genesis starts with God is the creator. First there is nothing, and then there is something because God said so. So let's pause again for a little discussion here. Now, I really do want to know what you're thinking, where you all are on this. And so there really is no, I'm not looking for a correct answer to this question, these questions. We're going to ask these two questions together. What do you think of the Bible's claim that God created the world? And along with that question, and I'll give you plenty of time to answer both of these, to talk with each other, why does it matter whether or not God created the world? Ready, go. So no matter where you landed on that discussion in your group, here's where we are. The Bible teaches that the earth is the Lord's, everything in it, that God created the world, therefore he owns it. Now, this means some really important things for us. In fact, I just made a short list here. This means that the world does not belong to governments, the rich and powerful, to famous people. The world does not belong to the winners of wars. The world also does not belong to you and me. Sometimes we would like to say the earth belongs to all of us. No, no, none of that. Genesis 1 and Psalm 24 are very clear. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world belongs to God, not to us. And by the way, if the world belongs to God and we live in it, then that has a lot to say about some of the responsibilities that we probably have as residents of God's world. We're going to get deeper into that at a later time. But before we finish tonight, there's one more corner that we need to turn. And this is an important one because we've gone Old Testament, the beginning, we've gone through the middle, and we need to get to where does Jesus impact this whole discussion? Well, the coming of Jesus leads John, one of Jesus' friends, to say this in maybe one of the most famous verses in all of the Bible. He says, "For God so loved the world that he gave." Now, some of you are going to be able to finish that verse on your own without me putting the rest of it up there. I'm not even going to put the rest of the words up there because this is the point for tonight. God so loved the world. In case you were wondering how God feels about the world, created it, owns it, and loves it. So this is really all we're going to try to do tonight. We needed to establish this before we can answer the question about changing the world. Is the world changeable? Do we have any say in changing the world? We needed to be able to say the world belongs to God. God created it. God owns it. God loves the world. So we can start now to answer that question. I'll give you a starter question to get you thinking about next week, and then I will see you later.